Welcome to Blender Frenzy. I am Justin, and today we are going to be adding the pistons to our skull. Now, this is what we have created so far. It's only the skull and the jaw, no extra parts, and so we're going to make it look even more menacing by adding these pistons. Now, the pistons are not functional. They're just for detail, so they don't move or anything. But I'm going to show you some pretty useful tips and techniques on how to manipulate these cylinders so that we can get some cool looking shapes like this. So when you're ready, let's get started. If you want to see more Terminator stuff, just come over to blenderfrenzy.com and you can see my new Blender Frenzy VFX course all about head tracking in Blender using the Terminator skull that we're making. Click take a look and then you can see what that's all about. If you scroll down, you'll get the skull. You'll see what we're going to create, making it look like the Terminator skull is under your skin. Whole bunch of stuff on how to film and how to create negative space and all of the good stuff here. You can check that out. If you just want the free starting file, start with the freebie single downloads. And then I've got a couple of them up here. I'll be adding more to this, but you can start with the T800 Metal Skull starting blend file here. And that is so you can start ready to go with the series, building your metal skull. And of course, if you want more, you can go to the Blender freebies, click sign up, and then you can see the member levels and what you can expect from those. You can also see what's inside and then scroll down to see all of the videos and extra videos on the Pro that you'll be receiving if you want. And again, that's blenderfrenzy.com. So now let's head back to the video. So because we're primarily going to be using our front and our side images for modeling, I'm going to show you some techniques for the cylinder that we can use to make things easier. So I'm going to open up a new Blender version. I'm using 4.4 here. I'm just going to get rid of everything. We're going to add in a cylinder. Going to show you that here. And of course, the first thing we want to do is take the vertices down. We don't need 32. If you don't see this panel here, just go to View and then Adjust Last Operation. And you can see my screencast keys down here. So I'm going to go ahead and scale this on the Z and just scale it up like that. Tab into Edit Mode and Control R to add some loop cuts. And before I click anything else, I'm going to scroll my mouse button to make a few loop cuts, then I'll click and then click again. So the first tip is to select these faces. So 3 in face select mode and AA to deselect everything, Alt, and then click between these two faces to go around this way. You can also go up and down if you click between these two faces. But we want to go this way, so I'm going to click these two. Alt E, extrude faces along normals. If I move my mouse up, they go out. If I move my mouse down, they go in. And then you can left click to set that where you want them. Okay, let's do the same thing with this one here. Alt click to select that loop. Alt E, extrude faces along normals. We're going to go out like that. So now we have something that looks like this. Now let's say I want to go back and reverse these. So I want this one out and this one in. We're not going to Alt E to extrude. This time we're just going to Alt S. So with these selected, we can press Alt S and that just scales them. So we can scale them in like this, and then I can take these ones, Alt S to scale them out like that. And the difference is Alt E will extrude that geometry. So if I take this, do an Alt S to make this a little bit bigger, and then Alt E to extrude faces along normals, you can see we've just created another loop here. So we've got an extra edge, and then we also have extra faces. If we did the same thing up here, Alt E to extrude faces along normals and go in, you can see we're just adding to the geometry. So we don't want to do that in this case. And I'm going to undo down here as well. So Alt S is just to scale those without adding any more geometry. Okay, next tip. I'm going to select these three. And for this, we need loop tools. So make sure you come to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, search for loop tools and enable that. If you don't see this here, we're going to need to get them as an extension. And in order to do that, we need to go to System and allow online access and then get extensions, search for loop tools. And you'll see a little install button. Just click install and it should enable it for you by default. If not, you can come into add-ons and make sure this is enabled by clicking that button there. But now we can eye to inset these, and it's not scaling them evenly. So let's just go ahead and click here to set that, and then right click, and now we have this option Loop Tools, and we can select Circle. And you can see it does something really weird. It's flipping it 90 degrees, and sometimes it flips it the other way 90 degrees. It just depends on your model and how much you've changed it. And the reason this is all messed up is because we have not yet applied the scale. So I'm going to undo this and this. And before we make any other changes, we need to tab out into object mode, make sure our object is selected, Control A, and apply scale. And you have some options down here. We can also apply rotation and location, but we only want scale, and that's good. And the reason we have to do this is because we've changed our object from the original cylinder. We've scaled it, we've extruded it, we've changed its shape. So Blender still thinks that the original size and shape of the cylinder is the default. So by applying the scale, we're now saying that this size and shape is now our new default. So we can come in here again, I'd inset that, and you can see that insets it much more evenly now. So something like this, then we can right click, loop tools, circle, and this is a lot better. And now we have some options down here for the circle. I like to choose fit inside because it maintains more of the size of our inset. And then we can change the angle too. I don't know why it tilts this, but we can change the angle to tilt it back a little bit like that. And then flatten is checked by default, and that just flattens that out. But for curves like this, I suggest to uncheck that. And then we have this that fits the curvature of the cylinder. And then we can close this. And the reason we would want to do this is now we can E to extrude this out. Okay, so the next step is to move stuff back and forth along the direction that the faces are facing. To do this, we come to normal transform orientation. So now I can press G to grab this, and Z goes back and forth. And that's at whatever direction that these are facing. So I can do this for any of these faces. So select this face, G, Z, back and forth along that face, or this face, G, Z. And this is the same thing of extruding them. So if I press E to extrude, it will automatically do that no matter what transform orientation we are in. But this actually just makes it so we can grab it and move it without adding geometry. And this is good for scaling and rotation as well. So if I select these faces, you can see they're not flat, but if I scale on the Z, 0, now they are flat. So we've got a flat end here, which is good. And then this end over here fits the curvature of the base cylinder. And this is really helpful, especially if the whole thing is rotated like this, and we just want to extend things out. So we want to take this end and just grab it. Instead of eyeballing it, we can GZ and it will go like that. Even though we've rotated it, it still works like it should. Okay, 2 more tips. Along with what we were just talking about, I can move the face, GZ, like this, but I can also move the whole thing as long as I select the face that I want to move along first and then hover over the rest of it, press L to select all linked. So any geometry that's linked to this face. And then what I can do is come up here to our transform pivot point and change this to active element. The active element is the white border highlighted one, and the rest of them are selected. So this is selected and active. If I press G, Z, it's going to move the entire thing along the active face there. To change the active face, I can shift click, which will deselect it first. So I have to do is shift click again. And now this is the active one. And if I GZ, now we're moving it this way. I come up here, shift select, and then click again, GZ, now we're moving it this way. This is also useful for rotation, so I can just do RZ, and we're rotating along that way. Or if I come down here and make this one the active selection, I can RZ and rotate it along this one. And the last tip here is we can do the same thing with the 3D cursor. If we change the pivot point to 3D cursor, I can shift right click to set that 3D cursor anywhere. If you don't see the 3D cursor, make sure you come up here, make sure that's checked and the overlays are on. And now we can just R to rotate that around there. We can choose an axis as well, but it might not work exactly the same. So you have to play around to test those. We can also select something, Shift S and cursor to select it. So that will go right in the middle of whatever is selected. And then that way we can do the same thing, R, Z, and then we can, except for, of course, we have to L to link, and then R, Z. Okay, that's not going to work. We can try X, Y. Okay, and so then it's going to be the Y axis here. We can also change to global or local orientation mode to get different axes. So those are all the tips. Let's head back over to our skull. So let's move our 3D cursor both in the front and in the side. So shift right click to where we're going to add our first cylinder, which will be this one here. So shift click there and then shift click there in the similar spots. Shift A and add in a cylinder. make sure I bring the vertices down. We don't need 32. So I'd like to do 12, scale that down, and we can just line it up here and then in here. Maybe scale it up just a little bit more. SZ, and then that scales it lengthwise. Of course, we have to be in the normal transform orientation, but this looks good here. Maybe we can grab on the Z and pull that down a little bit, and then even scale that back just a tad. Okay, so I'm actually going to go into solid shaded over here, and then I'm just going to hide our skull for now. And then over here, I'm going to do something that's going to save us a little bit of time. If I tab into edit mode, I'm going to delete this face and then fill in the rest of these. So I'm going to take this edge and this edge, F to fill, and then I'll take the edges here, just press FF to fill that way, and then FF to fill it this way. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom here. And that's just because we're going to duplicate this and connect them with these other pieces over here. Okay, and let's go back in here and wireframe. And now we can, in object mode, Shift D to duplicate this, and we're going to try to place it and so this is going to probably be our good pivot point here. So over here, I think I'm going to go into solid shaded and then take this middle face, Shift S and cursor to selected, and then we can rotate this around the 3D cursor. To tab back out into object mode, and then we can rotate this like so. Let's just make sure that we are still staying in line with the side here. Okay, that looks all right. We can also scale on the Z right here like this from the 3D cursor as well. Okay, so that looks like that lines up pretty well. We're going to do the same thing, Shift D, and I'm just going to do the same thing with this piston here. I'm going to go back to the median point for just a second. Okay, let's see if that is going up inside the skull. I want to make sure that it is. Yes, so that's not too bad there. Maybe just kind of eyeball it to make sure it's kind of about the same size as this one. All right, so in edit mode, let's get this back in the center here. Cursor selected right there. I do want to just L to link that, and then R, Z, and we're going to rotate this. You know what? Let's change this to active element, RZ. There we go. And then we're going to take these two, E to extrude those straight out. And then this is where we might have to adjust our geometry over here. Okay, that's good for now. Let's go to this one. We're going to do the same thing. Select, then L for linked, RZ, and we're going to rotate it like this. But I'm going to select this one as the new active, and then we're going to rotate it. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it from here. You know what? Let's actually rotate it, press Z, and then press Z one more time, and this will default to the global even though we're in normal transform orientation. And I just want to put that over here. Okay, and then let's take these faces, pull them back a little bit, just double G to pull them back. And then just take these two, E to extrude, pull that back a little bit to line them up. Same thing with this one, GZ, and this is why it's so much easier to use this in the normal transform orientation. I'm going to take this one and let's rotate ZZ for the global axis. I'm going to hold down Shift. Actually, I'm going to hover my mouse a little bit away from the selection. RZZ, and then there we go. Just want to kind of line those up here. Just also make sure we're not too far off in the front. Oh no, we're not. That's good. And this isn't exactly what we see in the picture, but that's okay. This is kind of my adaptation for this. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. But first, we have to make our little extrusion here. So we've got this little piece that's going to come out this way right here. So let's take our loop cuts and we'll pull that. I'm going to actually use this side as a reference instead. So I'll put this one here, and then I'm actually do another loop cut and put it, where is that? Okay. The loop cuts will always go in the middle of the geometry, so if you don't see it, just scroll out and then try again. There it is. Okay, we can grab that, pull that up like this. So there we go. We see that here and here. And now before we do our inset and extrusion, of course, we need to apply the scale. So let's just take this cylinder, Control A, and apply that scale. And now we can come in and take these faces that are maybe these 3 right here. Maybe these 4. Maybe we can do 4 of them. I to inset that. Right click, Loop Tools, Circle, and change this to fit inside and uncheck Flatten. We can also change the angle. And that is that's not as neat and clean as I'd like that to be for the circle. So this isn't actually going to work for us, this whole flatten thing. So what we can do instead is just scale it, but we want to scale it on the median point, which is basically in the center of everything that we have selected. So we're just kind of adapting now GZ to kind of pull that out to kind of make it flush. For this, we actually might have to just improvise here for the curvature. So if I take this edge in proportional editing mode, GZ, and move that out, of course we got to scroll our mouse wheel down, then that's going to kind of pull that out along a little bit of a curvature like that. And then we can take these and maybe GZ and pull those back a little bit. Yeah. Again, I don't know why that didn't really help us by default, but there we go. That's good enough. So we can now take these faces, E to extrude those out here, SZ to scale those. Let's not be in proportional editing anymore. SZ 0. There we go. And we can do the same thing. We can take these 2 faces, E to extrude those out, and then we can go over to this one, take these 2 faces, E to extrude those out. And this is just really a hackish way of connecting these, or actually at least pretending like they're connected. And to add to that illusion, we'll add in a little bolt here. So I'm going to shift right click, but let's go out into object mode and then add in another cylinder, scale that down, and then this is going to be our bolt right here. So let's rotate this on the Y 90. We can scale that on the Z down a little bit like this. And then our X, yeah, just trying to orient this. Just the axes that you scale, rotate, and move things on might be different with your model. Just remember that. So I'm looking over here to kind of line this up with that. Okay, and then in edit mode, add a loop cut here, and then take this face and just scale it down like this. And that's it. So let's duplicate this down over here to match that, just like that. Okay, and the only thing left is to have our loop cuts to create the shape of the piston rods and the casing. So let's come over here into edit mode, add in a loop cut, click and drag, loop cut. And remember, we can take this loop. If we do Alt S here, it's just going to scale that, but we want to actually add geometry by Alt E to extrude faces along normals, and then pull that in, and that's going to match this rod here. I'm going to take this one here. We're going to do the same thing. Alt-E, extrude faces along normals, out just a little bit. And then we're going to come up here, add in another loop cut here. And just clicking and dragging, and then once you get it where you want it, just click to set it. Do another one here, and one more right here. So we have this here. I'm going to Alt select this loop, and then Shift Alt select this loop, Alt E to extrude faces along normals, and pull both of those out at the same time, just like that. Perfect. Okay, let's go to this one, and then I'm going to apply the scale here first, and then go and do the same thing over here. So we've got loop cut, select the loop, Alt E, extrude faces along normals, and pull that in like that. Awesome. So let's save our work. I haven't saving as often as I should be. Let's go ahead and add all of these together. I'm going to make this the main piece. So let's take this and then just shift select all of these and select this one as the last one. Control J to join all of those together. And now, because we've used very little geometry, it's very angular, we can get around this by, in object mode, right-clicking and shade auto smooth, which is going to, I don't know why it says asset loading is unfinished. Let's just go ahead and apply the scale again. Now that we've joined all of these together, just Control A, apply that scale. Let's try that again. Let's do a right-click, shade auto smooth, and that should have given us, yes, this smooth by angle modifier. And you can see it is a little bit more smooth, but I'm going to bump this up to 50, and now you can see that's a lot better. So if we come out here, you can see that's actually pretty smooth. Let's add in the jaw as well. And then we will add the mirror modifier here in just a little bit. Oh, this isn't actually going down as far as it needs to, but we know how to adjust that. So let's tab back in here. And technically this geometry for the jaw, this actually should be higher. And I suppose I could take these here and just GZZ and move those straight up just a little bit like that. But we do need to probably extend this and also rotate this. So in front mode here, yeah, it looks like either the picture is bent or the rod is actually bent on this Terminator. I don't want to bend it, so let's just take this and I'm going to put the 3D cursor right here and then just rotate it slightly inwards like this if I can, and then we can grab it and also try to place it a little bit better there. What does that look like? That's okay. A little bit more inset there. Just looking in both views to make sure we don't get too far off track. That's not too bad, actually. I think that's good right there. Let me also take the bottom faces here, GZ, and just extend those down. Perfect, just like that. Okay, now we want to apply that scale again, save it. So now the modeling is all done. We just need to project the image onto it. So to project our image, we need to edit our UVs. So let's go to the UV editing, and I'm gonna hide the jaw and the skull so that we just see our pistons here. And this is in edit mode, so we just press A to select all of our geometry. And this is a mess. This is from all of our changes and stuff from the default UVs. Now we need to add a material onto this, so you can either do that over here or over here. So I'm just going to assign the skull material to it that we have already created. And in order for this to work, we need to have the UV underscore front and the UV underscore side UV index maps created on our new geometry. So let's pull this out over here and go to our data tab. And under UV maps, we need to just create those names. So UV underscore front and then plus underscore side. So now back over here, you can see they are not red anymore, which means that they do exist. The red means that they didn't, And so now we've renamed them, we just need to project them. And we're going to use this setup of our camera front and our camera side that we did in the very first video of this series. If you haven't seen that, go ahead and watch that to understand what we're doing here. But I'm going to, since we're already in side mode, we're going to select the side camera and 0, make sure we are in camera mode, and select the side UV index map that we just created. And now we can select all of our geometry and U project from view. And then we're going to do the same thing with the front camera. Make sure we're there. Select the front. We've already have our geometry selected. U, project from view. And now we can see this all in our front and then also in our side. So these two are now projected correctly onto the geometry. Let's take a look and see what we have with everything here. Okay, and that's not too bad. That's not too bad. That looks like it's being projected correctly. You might want to also check the mask here. So remember we made this mask when we made this skull for the side. So if I just plug that one in, you can see this is the black and white painted mask, which these two for some reason are not, this isn't being applied to them. And I think it's because we need to reassign some of the materials. So you can see this side here and then the front here. So let's tab into edit mode here, select everything, and then we can select our teeth vertex group and deselect those. So go to materials, and with the skull selected, we can click assign. And there we go. So now we have that black and white texture. We can also get rid of these. I don't remember when I had the extra ones here. But we have to do this out in object mode, so I'm going to get rid of skull 1 and teeth 1. So if you remember the skull, the mask side, everywhere there is white painted, that is where the side image is painted, and everywhere there is black, that is where the front image is painted. So we've blended the two together. Go to our texture paint, then we can hover over here, press backspace to get the defaults. I don't know why it does that. But then we can, paint white and black again on these. Make sure I undo that. Let's get our fall off here, sharp fall off for this, just so that it blends a lot better right there. And also same thing maybe right up here. We can also paint over here as well. But I think I just do some patchwork here. I don't have that selected, so let me go to layout, and then we can select those, texture paint, and then I can paint on that, because all of this should be white unless you want to use the front image as the image for the pistons, but I don't. I want to use the side image. So yeah, we can come over here, also paint white here like this so we don't miss anything. Okay, so once you get it how you want it, hover over here, Alt-S to save that mask so you don't lose that information. And now if we plug our principled shader right back in, we have the pistons with the proper projection. And the only other thing we need to do is to mirror this. So we can go to Layout, go to Modifiers, Add Modifier, search for a Mirror Modifier, and then with our eyedropper over here, we can select our skull as the object, and ta-da! This is what we now have. Let's go ahead and save it. All right, let's look at our handiwork. Not too shabby. It's actually added a lot of detail that makes it look even more menacing. So now that we've got the pistons, the next thing we need to work on is the gears over here. So instead of it just being on a flat surface, we're going to model out a little bit of that to make it pop out in 3D. So when you're ready, head on over to the next one.